in my country, we have a greeting whereby we say shikamo. Shikamo, which is a respective kind of greeting. So I'll start with that. So my name is Dijisma. I'm from Tanzania, representing Simulizi na Sauti. I'm a geopolitical analyst. And yesterday you did the opening remark, and it was fantastic. I said, Africans need to hear what you have to say. So please introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and we'll proceed with the questions.
Wanafuse, mambo ni mengi. Nakosa muda wa kutafsiri. Kwa hiyo yeyote ambaye ana nafasi, ambaye anaweza kaitafsiri, anisaidie kutafsiri, ambaye anaweza kaitengenezea subtitle, basi anisaidie kutengeneza subtitle, kwa sababu Fuse ni jamii, tunasaidiana kwenye majukumu.
Thank you very much, and I feel flattered, obviously. So my name is Dr. Christian Ayuku. I'm a board member of Afrodat. I sit on other boards as well. My background is finance. Yeah, I am based here in South Africa, but I'm originally a Ghanaian.
Ghanaian, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start with a quote which really fascinated me, and it's from Magreth Thatcher.
Yeah.
So could you repeat that and give it a context so that people can understand the significance of that quote?
Yeah, so the reason for giving that example, where Margaret Thatcher was interviewed in the 1980s. Yeah, by a journalist. I've forgotten the name of the journalist, but if you Google it, you can find it. Or if you go to YouTube, you find it. She was being asked, why is it that resource-rich countries are not really seen as rich across the world? And the answer from her was that there is no correlation between resource, in the country and being rich. Otherwise, countries like Russia, Angola, DRC, and the rest would have been very rich, by now. And she gave examples of Japan, Switzerland, and Singapore, who are very rich. And it's not as a result of democracy or resources, but primarily as a result of leadership. And what came to mind is that the African disease or the African problem is not as a result of we not having democracy right. We have just copied democracy from the West as an omnibus and planted it in Africa. And we seem not to have the way of going around it to make our economies thrive. You then come to realize it's more about the leadership that you steward in the country that leads to the prosperity. Without it, you're not going to have it. So the question then you start asking yourself is, how did the Asians get it right? Look at China. China is not a pure democracy. They have a hybrid model, which is working for them. They are the second largest economy in the world. You have the Middle East. None of them is a democracy. They are kingdoms, and they are doing very well. Look at Europe. They have their own style, and they are doing very well. Largely, Europe does not have resources. Then you have North America. You have South America. So the question is, Africa, what is your unique focus? And how then do you leverage on that to excavate the value out of it? Leadership needs to lead the paradigm shift in the country. Africa is mostly a primary extractive environment. Of course, countries are at various levels of development. So you take South Africa, infrastructure here is not comparable to Malawi. So it would be unthinkable for Malawi to say they want to borrow money and then do the kind of infrastructure that South Africa has. The question then someone would ask is, are we going to eat infrastructure? People are hungry. So it's back to basics: food, shelter, clothing. If you are hungry, you are not thinking of where you want to sleep. After being satisfied, you want to think about where you put your head. And after putting your head somewhere, then you want to focus on clothing, lifestyle, going to the stadium, and that sort of thing, going for holidays and the rest. But before you get to holidays, you need to resolve that food area. And in doing that, it's not just planting. The value chain is big. So how do you then put into place policies to ensure that graduates who are being churned out from the universities or the technical institutions or polytechnics are then able to find a place to play along the value chain? Not until that is done, we would always start talking of unemployment. If you have unemployed resources, human beings, it's a resource in disguise. It becomes a real resource when you have harnessed it. But most of the time, politicians are not able to harness it because they are focused on the next elections. So picture a scenario where you have a government comes into a party. They are thinking of the next elections, and then if it's $10 million they require to do the next elections, what they then say is, if the cabinet is made up of 10 people, they say, okay, the 10 million is divided equally amongst everybody, 1 million each. By the third year, you need to put it into the party's bank account. If it's not in the party's bank account, we get you out of the cabinet. Then the Minister of Trade then goes to his ministry and says, guys, I've been giving 1 million. So I'm also spreading it across all of you. If you don't deliver what you've been given, I'm going to kick you out. What that then means is that, for example, somebody has imported rice and sugar to the port of, let's say, Dodoma. Okay. And then to clear it, the guy in charge of customs is saying, come and pay X amount for it to be released. You start dragging your feet and say, okay, it cannot be cleared because you need my signature. So the rice and sugar stays at the port. By the time it gets ready to be cleared, it's rotten, full of maggots. These are the issues. Somebody also asked in the meeting yesterday that can't Africa mobilize its own capital markets and raise capital flows and that sort of thing? It is possible. Everything is possible in life. I always say the impossibility is basically because you have not been able to put your mind around it to deliver it. Yes, countries go into Europe to go and take commercial loans and that sort of thing. But what about somebody sitting back and saying that, hold on a minute, South Africa has got a trade surplus. Tanzania needs some kind of investment in the railways. How about pooling the resources so that you borrow directly from South Africa? So you take South African rand to come and do what you want to do in Tanzania. Yes. The way you do it is, it's not the paper money that you want. It is the physical items that you need. So can you buy them from South Africa and take them to Tanzania and then do it? Yes, you can do it. If that is possible, why don't you then go ahead and do it? I gave an example of purchasing power parity. Yes. Using 2-liter Coke.
Yes.
I checked yesterday on Google. In South Africa, 2-liter Coke is around 26-27 rand for the bottle. Okay. In the US, it's almost $2. Okay. If you change it to the rand, it's about 50 rand. So there's a differential of about 22. That's good. It just goes to show that it's cheaper to produce Coke here than to do it in New York. But flip it, borrowing $100 million from the US, whether it's from the government or IMF or World Bank or that sort of thing. When you are repaying the money, bear in mind, you borrow dollar to come and spend in local currency. When you are paying back the money, you are converting the local currency back into the dollar to pay that amount. You'll be paying the principal, you'll be paying the interest, and then you pay that difference between the New York Coca-Cola and then the South Africa Coca-Cola, which is a 22. And that is going to be following you like an albatross at any point in time. I call it negative jaws. Negative jaws in the sense that the jaws are always opening every now and then. And you are always playing catch up. Yeah. So you can never resolve that debt issue. That's the thing. You can't develop because you've literally, stranglehold your neck and you can't take in the oxygen. BRICS have shown that you can borrow in local currency. Local currency, if you are borrowing in local currency amongst the members, means that you are only paying interest and principle. That other albatross does not follow you. But guess what? Donald Trump is now saying that if you do business in your local currency and you do business with the US, I'm going to put 25% tariff on your goods, which is extra tax on your goods. So the question now you need to ask yourself is, how many African presidents are going to be strong enough to start saying that we are still going to do business in our local currencies? We are not going to go for the American dollar. And that, of course, also comes with consequences. Let me paint a very interesting picture to you. Before Donald Trump came, when you go out there to borrow money, it's linked to diversity, where they start talking about LGBTQ and that sort of thing. Africans were having problems, borrowing money. Uganda was having a huge issue where Biden was threatening so many sanctions on, Uganda.
Because they passed that.
Exactly. I mean, one of our, board members from Uganda, was even brokering a $400 million health, package, and that was put on hold as a result of this thing. Donald Trump came and he said, look, guys, there's nothing like LGBTQ. There are two sexes in the world, male and female. Suddenly, everything changes. It's only the Europeans who are playing that nonsense card. And Africans are suddenly having to change their colors. So it tells you the nature of the leaders we have. Excuse me to say, our leaders do not have balls. It takes leaders who have balls to say that we are not going to follow the status quo. Look at Rwanda. I'm not saying Kagame is perfect, but he put into place certain things to create stability.
True.
Look at Russia. Russia put into place certain things to create stability in the sense that Putin has been there all this while and he's created that stability. Africa needs that kind of stability in terms of governance because of our chieftaincy, background. Our civilization was basically around chieftaincy. You have the chiefs sitting in place, ruling over the people, and that sort of thing. I hope I've done justice to.
You have done more than justice.
Thank you very much.
It did raise some other questions. One of the things that is very important, you spoke about the three basic needs of human beings, whereby it's food, then it's shelter, clothing. Then it's clothing. And with clothing comes, I remember when I was studying, we used to be taught the difference between needs and wants. So the needs are those three basic, and once you start to go to the third one, whereby you need a nice car to drive around, you need to go and watch a football, you need those kind of amusement and entertainment. Unfortunately, as you said, the leaders, African leaders who are there, all their focus is to be elected the next for the next term, which means they only do those things that do bring them victory or will help them in achieving another victory in the next election. Which means they don't pay attention to the most basic things, which is food. And unfortunately, Africa has the most fertile land of any continent in Africa, in the world. And we have a lot of free land, which is fertile, and we could do. But if you remember, there was a famine in Malawi, which was a consequence of loans from IMF. And even their president and even the financial minister said it was due to the policies of the IMF. So the leaders, instead of paying attention, with all the resources that we have, we used to be, some of us are hunter-gatherers, some of us are farmers. That's how we've survived since before colonialism. But since the leaders are simply there to do things that will get them elected, they don't pay attention to FA, which is the first one, the food. We don't have food stability. It's a shame that Africa, we have to import food from abroad. It's a very big shame. Secondly, which is clothing, but they jump to the third one, which is clothing and other amusements.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some countries do have some few fancy projects, some roads, some bridges and this, but those most basic things we are still missing. And unfortunately, it's systematic. I was listening to one of the professors, to Professor Howard, and it said it's by design. And we have corrupt leaders, and I would like to have your opinion. My belief from the research that I've been doing for several years is that, if I may put it like the colonizers, or those the countries that do still colonize us financially, do love corrupt leaders, because that's the only way they could get their agendas passed. What do you think about that? Do you think that? Sorry. Can you give us a few examples of African leaders who are doing what they're supposed to be doing as leaders?
Okay, so let me step back a bit, give you the not so good, and then perhaps talk about the good, presumably. So if we talk about the not so good, so we all know about Mobutu Sese Seko of the then Zaire, which is now the DR Congo.
Yes.
He was doing all the dirty job for the Europeans and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they were, pumping money at him and all that. But eventually, when it caught up with him, and he became very sick and all that, he started calling Jacques Chirac, whom he had done so many things for. And Jacques Chirac would say, "Oh, let me speak to my Minister of Finance, or let me speak to my Minister of Health, let me speak to my Minister of Foreign Affairs." Eventually, long story short, his health deteriorated to the extent he was wearing pampers. He was pooing on himself. And it was Morocco who took him and put him in his, in their country until he died. Let's take the issue of, what do you call it, Kabila. Kabila at a point was alleged to be doing business in diamonds, selling it to the foreigners and that sort of thing. And his own bodyguard took him out. Let's look at Liberia. President Samodo also did something like that, and eventually what happened? Civil war, and he was killed. Look at Gambia. The gentleman who eventually had to be kicked out of the country, and even in going away from the country, he took a large portion of the treasury. Up to now, nobody has been able to do anything to him. Now let's take the French, the Francophone countries.
Yes.
What happens between the Francophone countries and France is that their GDP is literally, hedged into France, where the Minister of Finance in France has to sign monies to be released to the various countries, and
that is until.
So the positive of it is that it makes the local currency very strong, compared to all the other countries. I always say, it looks like the Anglophone countries were in a hurry to kick out their colonial masters, so they got everything wrong. But be as it may, the French franc, depreciates all the way to about 600 CFA to the euro, and then beyond that, France will then release funds to them because there's that hedge. Then the currency goes back to about 500 to the euro. So their economies are relatively strong. And it's basically because France has invested pension funds into those countries. If you go into those countries today, French citizens, citizens from France, are owning large tracts of plantations and all those, especially Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso. I mean, look at Niger, the price of uranium. But immediately they kicked these guys out. Suddenly they push it to about $200 per, the unit. That's the thing. So that's the not so good. But then when we look at the good aspects, yes, Kagame is doing something good. The economy has opened up, and that's of course he has his own flaws. There's no perfect human being, but generally speaking, he has his own flaws. Rwanda and Burundi had that same civil war issue at the same time. But look at Rwanda today, that differential. Then, exactly, leadership. Now look at the Sahelian countries. Ever since they kicked out the French, look at how their economies are moving. They've aligned, yes, to Russia and China, but at the end of the day, they seem to know what they are doing. The powerhouses like Nigeria and that sort of thing are still struggling. They are not able to handle themselves. Even Dangote and his refinery. You would imagine that because he's an indigene, he should be having that support.
Yes.
But that support is not coming.
He's complaining
exactly.
that he's being sabotaged.
Take Ghana, for example. So when the previous government was on, there were some banks, and that's sort of indigenous banks, because the then Minister of Finance wanted to take over. And there was a pushback from the owners. They ended up taking the licenses from those guys. The message I'm just trying to drive across is that most of the African leaders are greedy. They are inward looking. They are not proper stewards of resources. For you to have proper stewards of resources, there needs to be some kind of check and balance in the countries, and that's where the media comes in, by way of exposing what is going on. So, for example, if you are facing challenges, accessing information and that sort of thing, start lobbying parliamentarians, if you have a parliamentary system, to set out a bill like a right for information bill and all that, so that it gives you the room to go to court if the information is not forthcoming. Unless, of course, the judiciary is also compromised. I know some countries is compromised. Because the president can take a phone, speak to the chief justice, and say, you have to do this. That's it. So this is the Africa we live in.
Very, very, very disappointing. And we just spoke about the Francophone countries. I remember this was Jacques Chirac's saying that without Africa, France will tumble and become a third world country.
Exactly.
So we've seen just 3 countries, which is Nigeria, Mali, and Burkina Faso, kicking them out. It has really shaken them. And as a result, geopolitically, because they did align with Russia and China, and they've tried so far it's reported 16 times to assassinate Captain Traore. And Russia sent almost 150 special forces to act as his bodyguard to protect him. So as a result, France is really pushing on the Ukraine war to send troops and armament to Ukraine to also hurt Russia.
Exactly.
That's how the geopolitical game is. But the way you see, as a financial expert, is those they've created a state of Sahel countries. Do you think they're moving through towards the right direction financially?
So in my mind, what I think they are trying to do is self-determination, as opposed to being controlled by a foreign power.
Like most of us.
Exactly. So, in psychology, there's something called learned helplessness. So, for example, let's say you have a dog in the house, and you're always kicking it. Initially, it will growl at you or bark at you. But it gets to a point, you kick it, it doesn't really care. It will just be watching you because it has formulated its own strategy of survival.
What's that terminology again?
Learned helplessness.
Okay.
So you are helpless, but you've undergone that learning of that helplessness. You don't really care anymore. That's the thing. So it's just to say that, yes, they've undergone that learned helplessness to protect themselves. But then secondly, also, they realize that with the little they have, they can do so much. So I worked in Togo for 3.5 years. And what I observed is that Burkina Faso, being more or less an arid region, was producing strawberries. These were very big, juicy strawberries. I mean, you can go to Google, YouTube, and then search. You see it, and they've been exporting. I mean, in Togo, the Lebanese and the Syrians were mostly the ones controlling the commerce corridor in terms of imports and exports. And these guys were importing strawberries into Togo and then into Lebanon and then into Egypt as well from Burkina Faso.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Ghana, for example, buys onions from Burkina Faso. Ghana has more fertile land than Burkina Faso.
What does that tell you? Because I recently saw that the tomato production in Burkina Faso has grown almost by 25%. Same thing as onions. What does that tell you? One country which has more fertile land is importing from one country which has less and undergoing some.
So it's not a surprise in the sense that Ghana at a point was just focusing on importing goods. So Ghana has been importing tomatoes from South Africa, importing tomatoes from Morocco, and importing tomatoes from Niger. In 2022, Ghana imported, I think, around $600 million worth of tomatoes into Ghana, which accounted for around 70% thereabout, approximately, for the national demand. So it tells you what's happening. And if you are focused heavily on importation of goods, what it means is that you are creating what is called unemployment. You are keeping your resources in country idle. That's the thing. And when you do that, how do you raise taxes? It means you are going to overburden the already small population paying the taxes. That's the thing.
That's very true. And I'd like to finish with one last thing, which is what would you tell to the common citizens, who at the end of the day, who are the ones who are really bearing the burden through taxes and hard life, infrastructure, health and everything? What do they need to look in for from a leader, especially the certain countries which are going through election this year? What kind of policies and what kind of campaign and message that those candidates will be talking about or campaigning about? What should they, because at the end of the day, the catalyst for this at the end of the day is leadership, regardless of the kind of government, which is, whether it's an autocracy, whether it's a monarchy, whether it's democracy. So for the countries that will soon have elections, what should they look for from the candidates?
First of all, the citizenry need to make sure they are well informed about where the country is at that point in time in terms of resources. So if we talk of resources, we know, for example, let's say in South Africa, for example, the basic food on the table is the mealie meal. So this is the grinded maize. Okay. So let's say last 5 years, a 5 kilogram bag was let's say 20 rand. Okay. But then currently a 5 kilogram bag is around 60 rand. The question you then ask yourself is, who amongst the leaders is bringing in policies that would reduce the impact of the increase in prices? Because I always say, without analyzing or overstressing the issue, the economics is all about your pockets. So the basic food you put on the table, the milk you buy, the meat that you buy, the groceries that you buy, what was the prices before? What's the prices now? It's not about the flyovers and skyscrapers. No. Those things are things that would confuse you. And those are the vehicles through which the politicians take their 10%. And what they do is, at the negotiating table in New York or in London or wherever, they do that with those who are going to issue the funds to them, who will do the road. That's the road. He has to pay something into the ruling party's account. So at the end of the day, for you to do the motorway, there isn't sufficient funds. I mean, there's a place here in South Africa called Talton. I went there to buy drip lines for my farm, irrigation. And I saw uncompleted, houses called RDP. And I kept asking, so who, did this shoddy work? And I was told it was something that happened in the previous president's time. That's Jacob Zuma. The guy who came to do it presumably had paid monies to a whole lot of, people at the municipality. And it got to a point he realized he had run out of budget. He couldn't finish the work. And then he just left it. That's the reality. So citizens need to look at their pockets, compare it to the last time the election was done, and then look at what the array of politicians or candidates are saying and who has the best message and the capacity to deliver. Not just the best message, but the capacity to deliver. And then go in and then vote for that person.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
And I'll also would like to welcome you to Tanzania.
Thank
Come
you.
and visit us.
I'll certainly do.
I know that other people also need time with you.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Ila mwana Fuse, ili upate content zote za Fuse kiwepesi, Fuse Military, Fuse X-Files, Fuse Adventure, Fuse Tech, Fuse Ndinga, Fuse Afya na zinginezo, kuzipata kwa wepesi jiunge kwenye Fuse WhatsApp channel. WhatsApp channel ni tofauti na WhatsApp group. Hii ni WhatsApp channel. Utapata direct link ya video zote pala zinapotoka. Moja ya njia ambayo unaweza kujiunga ni kuskani hii hapa QR code, au tuma ujumbe wa WhatsApp kwenye namba hii hapa, utapata link ya kujiunga kwenye WhatsApp channel. Ila pia nitakuwa naweka link kwenye comment section. It's your techie DJ Smart 255 hapa SNS. Unaweza kunfollow on my Instagram DJ Smart 255, YouTube channel DJ SMA 255, Threads DJ Smart 255, Snapchat DJ Smart 255, TikTok DJ Smart 255. Account name yapo, lakini vile unaweza ukatoa simu yako ukascan hiyo ikakupeleka moja kwa moja huko. Ninakuwa na posti vitu ambavyo ni fun, clip kwa ufupi ambazo mada ambazo unazitoa, mambo yangu ya mapishi na pochopocho za hapa na pale. TikTok DJ Smart 255.
DJ Smart. Easy.